This is Jankus from the ARC Westchester, and welcome to the Tech Learning Exchange. At ARC Westchester, I try and promote the use of personal technology, things like smartphones and smart speakers like the Echo. If you have any suggestion for future Tech Learning Exchange sessions, just let me know. My email is up there, jjankus@westchesterarc.org. Today we have quite a few people from all around the country. I would appreciate it if you would take some time after this webinar. Don't do it now, pay attention, but after this webinar, if you would go to our website and just take a look around. We've been doing a lot of things during the last 4 years, trying to come up to speed and learn about all the possibilities of personal technology. We've done 3 tech conferences. We do a whole series of webinars. It's a resource that we hope everybody will share, because nobody with a field that has 4 billion or something, God knows how many apps are out there, nobody's an expert in this. Everybody's learning and feeling their way. And today's subject, we're talking about building community alliances. Our guest, Chris Lerch, is going to start in just a couple of seconds. I just wanted to talk about some of the things we've done locally here in Westchester County, New York. A couple of years ago, I happened to attend a wonderful presentation that was done by Mercy College, by the Dean of the School of Health Sciences, on various iPad apps and what you can do with them. Afterwards, I went up to her, complimented her on the presentation, and we started chatting, and she had a whole bunch of nursing, PT, OT, and other students that were looking for places to actually get field work experience. And I said, well, that's great. I serve about 2,000 people. Why don't you come into our agency and help us out? And since that time, their students have gone through several years of working with the individuals in our houses, in our day locations. They've produced some research out of that. They've gotten to know the population. It's been a great, absolutely great relationship. And now we've expanded our alliance to include AHRC, a sister ARC chapter in New York, a very large agency who is doing a lot of interesting things in personal technology. A local BOCES is part of our group. And the library system in Westchester is part of our group. They're going to be hosting a new website soon. The Visiting Nurse Service of Westchester, we've connected with them, and now they're a partnership learning about how technology can be used in the health field. All this started with that one little conversation after a presentation. So you never know where the network is going to bring you. And just be patient and persevere, and you don't know what will be built over the next 4 years. With that, I'm going to turn it over. I have to switch screens. I'm going to have our presenter today, Chris Lerch, who's the Director of Information Services at Heritage Christian Services, talk about how they approach building community alliances up there.
Okay, we ready to start?
We're ready to start.
I'm Chris. I'm Chris Lerch. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Jordan. And like Jordan, I have an adult child with a developmental disability, and I've been in this field not as long as he has, just since 2011, taking over at Heritage. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what kind of technology we use, how we approach it, and what kind of relationships we establish with partners in order to help deliver some of that. So this is just a little bit about our agency. We're the second largest agency in Western New York, which is the Rochester, Buffalo area. Our primary office is in Rochester. We have a regional office in North Tonawanda in Buffalo. And we have over 100 locations, which include group homes, day habs. I'll get to some specifics. And, like most of you probably, our rapid growth is in emerging services. That's the way it's been for the last couple of years, supporting people in their community through non-certified homes, through community hab, and lately through self-direction. So there's the list of services of what we do. As I said, the bottom 2 are the 2 that are really growing for us, and those demand a bigger emphasis on technology because they're not staffed 24/7. So, and people who choose these options to live in their own homes, can do that with the right support. And just more about Heritage, we diversify. We try to reach people through the community in many ways. The Life Center is a wellness center, for example, that's open to folks with disabilities and without. We operate a farm, we operate daycares, we operate a stable, a store, and those things help with community outreach, both in terms of employing folks with developmental disabilities as well as meeting people in the community and getting to know them and them getting to know us. So I'm going to go by this definition of assistive technology, or I'll call it access technology, and this is from the Disabilities Education Act. But you've probably seen many definitions, but it really is a tool, something either off the shelf or, which is more and more the case, that allows people to better function. So here's some examples. With some of these we use, some of them we don't, but just to give you an idea of scope, you've all probably remember Dynavoxes. By the time I got involved in this, that was moving towards apps versus the proprietary hardware. And we've implemented several of these and hope to implement more once we get funding and other support. So medication management, we've had a lot of success with Medicube, for example. I'll talk about them a little later. Wearables are coming into function. We're doing a couple pilots with those. Gaming is also a way to build bridges and get folks using technology to play a game, but the side effect is that they're learning. So the goals here at Heritage, and they're probably yours too, are fostering independence with supporting people in the community, supporting people through what we call customized residential options, which are non-certified residences, and how we can help them through prompting, safety, hygiene, things like that, and then using technology to improve social relationships, to get people interacting, if not physically, then virtually. So like most of you, this is the type of technology that we are implementing. We have a series of apps, sometimes too many. I'll talk about that a little later. Computer modifications, things that we've been able to purchase, either hardware or software modifications. And then specialized software. We use technology from a vendor called AbleLink. They're out of Colorado. And we've kind of grown with them because when I first got involved, they were selling proprietary, rather expensive solutions. They were basically losing business to apps on consumer devices like iPads. So they've made that change in the last 5 or 6 years to move from proprietary hardware and software to more of an apps-based selection of products. We use a product called TouchStream. They recently got bought out by a company called Point Click Care, and those are tablets that we can put in an apartment or a home. They're programmed by a caretaker, and then they provide prompts, check-ins, things like that, medication checks, things like that. We've done a couple pilots, and we've got probably 30 of those out there right now. Medicube, as I mentioned, has been a big success to be able to program and remotely administer medication, probably 50 to 60 of those right now out and being used by people. We train the individuals and their families along with representatives from the company. Same thing with TouchStream. We're also using some monitors from a company called Simply Home, and you may be familiar with them. They're a market leader in home safety monitoring, things like that. Where we have had some success is with community partners, and probably the major partner we have right now here in Rochester is Rochester Institute of Technology. Their research and development center has been a good partner for us. I'll get into more detail about what we're doing with them. We're also working with people from the University of Rochester, the other large college in the Rochester area. They have a Center for Developmental Disabilities. And what we've done in this area is collaborate and benchmark with other agencies in Western New York, including these. And we're sharing a sense of, the good news is we're all in the same place. The bad news is we're all in the same place because nobody's quite figured this out yet, but it helps to have some support of people who are also experimenting, trying things, and sharing their successes and their failures. So, that's important, I think, too, to reach out to other agencies in your area. And nobody's doing it exactly the same in terms of the ones that we're working with. And then the vendors, I've talked about them. It's kind of a push-pull. Working with colleges, it frankly can go slow, and I'll elaborate on that. Whereas vendors obviously want to get paid, and they're pressuring you to implement, maybe before you're ready. So it's kind of a balance with those two partners in terms of trying to keep an even pace. OPWDD here in Region 1, Kirk Maurer, who just recently retired, but tried to bring everyone together, all the agencies in Region 1, hosted by RIT for a couple of meetings and conferences, and just mostly to generate the kind of meetings that Jordan was talking about, just people interested with the same affinity for these topics, students able to demonstrate their projects, things like that. So OPWDD has been a partner in that as well. The Idea Lab is our main gateway into RIT, or it was when we started. The Idea Lab is run out of the Entrepreneurial and Research Center at RIT. What they do is they ask nonprofits in the area, what problems do you have right now? What could be solved via technology? It's not limited to developmental disabilities. We have a large deaf population in Rochester because of the National Technical Institute of the Deaf. AVBI is the main agency supporting people who are visually impaired. They all have problems that they're hoping that technology can solve. The Idea Lab brings multidisciplinary parts of RIT, students from computer science, industrial design, mechanical engineering, brings them together with the nonprofit over a weekend, and the goal is to develop proof of concepts of, we submitted a list of 20 projects, let's say, and we got 3 that were RIT was interested in through the Idea Lab. So I spent a couple of weekends with those students just kind of fleshing out, doing a proof of concept, and then several of those are in the patent phase right now. Here's some projects that the students were interested in. Gamification of hygiene, so an app for individuals who take care of an avatar by taking care of themselves. So as they brush their teeth or take a shower or do certain things, they're also interacting with an avatar and earning points, and the whole gamification strategy of the kind of rewards that you get, the dopamine, I guess, when you win on Candy Crush or whatever, very similar type of thing. EasyTP is a toilet paper dispenser where we can monitor the amount, believe it or not, and maybe you guys are aware of this. We have a lot of plugged toilets and stuff with just an excess of toilet paper being used. So this was able to monitor that. It was a cool little gizmo. Another one that's being developed is virtual reality social simulations, situation simulator. And what that does is it allows people on the autism spectrum to deal with computer-generated avatars in certain situations, so being able to learn to maybe read facial expressions better or tone of voice better, and practice on these avatars so that you can bring those skills into real-world interactions with people. Also, biometric measuring, somebody on the autism spectrum, when they do run into these interactions, and perhaps a fight or flight thing takes over, being able to monitor their respiration, perspiration, things like that, helps them to learn about that, recognize it, and then self-monitor themselves. Smart Shelf is, there's a couple of these being developed along with smart refrigerators where barcoded food can be monitored and can keep track of calories and only make certain foods available at certain times, things like that. So this is an example. These are 2 faculty at RIT and a student, and is a couple years old, this picture, and the graphics are a lot better, but he's in a hallway in a school, and he's interacting with various avatars. Some of them may be angry at him. Some of them may want to just share a story, and you can see he's being monitored for pulse and things like that on his hand. So a lot of data is being collected and then refined in that way. So, RIT hosts a conference where students, not just from RIT, but here's a student from the University of Rochester, that do poster sessions. And these are great for agencies to just wander around and and be able to check out some of the work that's being done in these studies that students are undertaking. Another one from another local college here on feasibility testing of Medicube, so a field study of the effectiveness of the Medicube. This was something, for example, that Region 1 LPWDD helped us coordinate, and these showcases occur once a year, twice a year at RIT, where students can come in and demo the projects they're working on, prosthetics, better wheelchairs, better canes, and in some cases tools that help the developmentally disabled. So I don't know how many of you are looking at these or implementing these. This is the touchscreen technology. We got a couple grants to implement these, and now they're being worked into self-direction budgets and things like that. And it's a tablet. It's not very portable right now. It mostly resides in an apartment. But a caretaker can, using a web interface, can remotely program it for various things, prompts to take medication, and then the individual would then touch the screen to confirm that that they're checking in when they get home from work or performing an activity. Eventually, these types of devices will be more portable and will ultimately be wearable, which I think then will provide even more help. There are apps on phones that do this right now that use GPS, and some other things where you can program the events of a person's day. Let's say they're taking public transportation, to remind them of where their bus stop is. A support person would go along and program this app, and then the individual would be able to run that app and then be able to be prompted to move along in their day, and hopefully be able to do that independently without the support once it's programmed. Medicube is another, as I said, we're using that quite a lot for medication distribution. Now, there are drawbacks to this. There's no video confirmation. I'll talk about video a little more in a little while, but you are assuming that once the medication is dispensed, that the person is taking it, swiping a barcode, and then alerts are generated if there is something out of the norm. And Jordan touched on this. Look in your area for conferences. Here are a few that I personally attended. So RIT does do an Effective Access Technology Conference every year, where you will see demonstration showcases. So there's lectures, but there's also the last one had 40 some poster displays or prototypes or proof of concepts. Black Hills Works in South Dakota does a really nice conference, Creating Possibilities. And as Jordan talked about, the Coleman Conference was really a leader in this. They started out supporting people who had brain injuries and began to realize that a lot of what they were working on would greatly benefit people with developmental disabilities. It's, in my opinion, not as effective recently because it used to be paired with the Anchor Technology Summit. They were both held in Colorado, and Coleman was on one day and Anchor was on the following day, Thursday and Friday, but they were in the same place. So to a conference goer, you got the summit, which was mostly vendors and practical solutions you can implement now, and the Coleman was on research and cutting edge stuff that maybe wasn't available yet. It was a nice combination. Unfortunately, Anchor has pulled their summit, and now that's a track in their national conference. So it's harder to, in my opinion, to justify physically being at Coleman for one day, at least if you're on the East Coast. So, but we follow along via the web. They publish their proceedings each year, so you can Google that and go out and see the work that's been done. And the Creating Possibilities were folks who went to Coleman and Anchor, but also thought that they wanted smaller technology that can be implemented now. So the Creating Possibilities is a very applied conference where you're going to see people and their experiences in using a lot of this technology. Yeah. This is where the rubber hits the road, and I'll be as frank as I can. That we've had our share of failures as well as successes, and it's slow going sometimes. There's new exciting technology that you can get excited about, but is it really available at a price that makes sense, and that individuals, say on a self-direction budget, can afford. So working with colleges, as I said, it's exciting, but it's also slow going. Before I came to Heritage, I actually worked at RIT, and the wheels turn slowly in academia. And you get students excited about a project, and then they graduate before it's done, things like that. But it is really just a place to go to meet other people looking to solve the same problem you are. And the colleges we work with have been gracious in that. And as I said, working with vendors is the opposite. They want to get paid, they want to implement. Sometimes, I know we've had to take a step back and say, look, let's go slow with this. Let's pilot. Let's look for grants. Let's try to get creative. And then keeping a current list of apps, tools, and services is a challenge. I mean, we started at Heritage saying, hey, let's do that, because we've got, a lot of employees who support different people with different abilities and are using different tools. And let's see if we can create a clearinghouse. And it frankly didn't go very well. And I'll talk about organization in a minute. And then we thought, you know what, let's expand the scope, and let's bring all these other sister agencies or our fellow local agencies. Maybe we can build a database between us, and then it'll be more useful. Well, we ran into just more of the same. And then OPWDD talked about building that with a BIP grant or, some other funding. And guess what? So that still hasn't been done either. So we're still working with spreadsheets and are not very efficient with that. And some of it is to how we're organized. And some of that is also the real question of, is access technology, could that be a service that we would provide to individuals, a billable service where we have experts that can come in and help with these solutions? Right now, Heritage is not taking a position that that's where they want to be. Instead, we're trying to connect vendors to people, vendors to employees, colleges to people, colleges to employees, and we're kind of playing the introductory middleman, maybe some requirements collection, some specification development, a tactical approach, but we're not offering it as a service. One of the key ways we've done that is to provide training to our service coordinators. And that, of course, if you're in New York, you know that changed last week. So, but that relationship still needs, I think, to happen, because those are the folks that are dealing with individuals in their communities. I mean, it's fairly easy to implement some of this technology in a certified situation or a day have situation. But really, you need a knowledgeable care coordinator to be able to present options. And what we've tried to do is prepare those folks with a toolbox, or at least knowing where to go to do that. Now, we are staffed, this competency, I've looked at probably a dozen organizations, and everyone does it differently. So if you can afford it, for example, People Inc. in Buffalo, they have 2 full-time people on this, research, training, tracking. They are embedded in their community hab silo right now, which makes sense for them. We've got El Siegel Center, they employ co-ops. RIT has a cooperative employment program, so that's a nice way to be interactive with a college. And let me tell you, colleges are a lot more responsive if you're employing their students. So from that standpoint, even though it's a rotating assignment, because students typically co-op for 6 months at a time, and they have to do a year total, so then they're moving on to other things. But El Siegel's had some success with that because they have the funding or decided to use the funding to do that.
Yeah.
At Heritage, it's more, I'm the only IT director that I know of that spearheads these efforts, and frankly, it's because it's a passion of mine, and I don't think from an institution standpoint it belongs in information technology. But so what we have is a committee that frankly doesn't meet as often as it should, of individuals from the various silos at Heritage who either jointly attend these conferences or get together or trade some information. But the danger of that, I mean, it is nice to have this competency spread out across various types of services that we support, but the downside is it's very tied to a person. So if that person leaves the agency, you've lost that competency. So we're struggling with that in terms of how to institutionalize this function. You know, the way we've decided to do it up until this, you know, care coordination model was to focus on the service coordinators and get a group of people here to, and get some service coordinators, you know, excited about it. And we're hoping that'll carry over. You know, we're still interacting with care coordinators all the time, that kind of relationship is going to continue, where we get some evangelists and the care coordinators who then share what they're doing for a family, or a family hears that another family is doing something that could benefit them, and then having the care coordinators try to make those introductions and those coordinations.
You mentioned before when you were talking about the colleges, yeah, we have a great relationship with Mercy College. The internship program that we implemented several years ago, you know, that comes out of our related foundation. So they do the fundraising for that, and then they provide stipends for the students, and that has been a great help to retain student interest, because they're not only doing it as part of their coursework, they're also getting compensated for their time. And it's been a real strength. I don't know how well it would have gone without that kind of compensation for a long-term commitment.
You understand the relationships with colleges are a great place, not necessarily just between you and them, but as kind of a meeting place in the community to be able to get people together.
It's also a great way for some of the students to meet people they may never have met before. You might be an OT person, but you haven't actually done field work. And I know when some of the students go into the houses, it's a great experience for them, because this is some of the first times that they've met somebody with a cognitive disability. And for the guys in the houses, it's great because it's somebody new, somebody interested. Lots of times the OTs and PTs happen to be pretty young ladies, and that even gets them happier. So it's a two-way street as far as building relationships.
Absolutely. To that point, you know, we make those same introductions, and folks that we support all get together and go to a hockey game, for example, and you know, go to campus and interact with the students, and it's a great experience for them too, to bring, not only bringing, as you said, people to our sites, but bringing folks we support to the campus.
One of the things when you're approaching a community organization, do you do it on, would you suggest that it be done on like a middle management level? Say like, you know, I'm in middle management here, but I was talking to the dean of the health sciences, or should it be sort of like an executive director to the dean of the whole school? You know, does it have to be that formal, or can it just be more of a serendipity kind of arrangement?
We actually started in the middle, like you said, but got exposure to so the associate provost, vice president of research, he would come to the Idea Labs, and didn't have anybody significant in his life with a developmental disability, but became very intrigued by this problem. The way he described it to me with Access Technology, you know, because they're doing Access Technology, as I said, for the visually impaired, for the deaf, for the physical impairment. He said that the stuff they're working on for the developmental disability population is a double problem. He said, because a lot of the things that students are developing to support people with other disabilities require a certain cognitive level. So he said, you know, we've got to break this code first to make this stuff usable to somebody who may not have that cognitive level. So for him, it was a very interesting problem to solve, and he's kind of thrown himself into it, and now he's on our board. So we were able to start at the middle, but having, you know, the third-ranking person at a college on your board has been a godsend to us.
You mentioned something really interesting, because this has been my question of the last 2 weeks, and it's a humbling moment when you look at your smartphone. I'm looking at my iPhone, and I have all these apps on it, and yeah, they can help me a lot of ways, but I have to have the cognitive abilities to say that, you know, I don't know what the weather is outside. Let me check my weather app. Or, oh, I got to take my medicine. Let me go find the pill app that I have. And so, like, I think one of the other missing links in our business is looking for that intelligent agent that would say to somebody, good morning, it's time to get up. Do you have your clothes ready? Don't forget to take your pills. I know AbleLink did a hardwired, very expensive version of this at one time, but that kind of like overarching AI kind of intelligence, I think, is something that would really help us long term, because we basically are serving in that role now where we educate people on the individual apps that they can use. But if you have somebody with cognitive challenges and all of a sudden the apps move to a different part of the smartphone and they can't find it, how do you overcome that issue?
I think time is on our side there. I mean, when you look at things like Google Assistant, which I find somewhat creepy because it's analyzed if I allowed it to, it would know where I've been for the last few days. It would know what searches I've implemented. It would know what ball game I went to, and then start to use machine learning to be able to then anticipate my needs. Which is creepy, but it's also could be great for somebody who could really make use of. And I think, if you look at where it was 3 years ago, Google Assistant, it now can make phone calls on your behalf as a bot using a voice that the person on the other end can't distinguish, right. To make, say, dinner reservations. Things like that, and the last Google conference, they demoed that capability, and so and like you probably out there, when you see technology like that, one of the first things you're thinking of is how can this be applied to somebody with a disability, right? And it's pretty exciting. One of the things I didn't really touch on because I'm not well versed in it is video monitoring. I know that in New York, it's more difficult to do that, even with consent, whereas other states, they're making heavy use of video monitoring in homes and in other settings. Instead of an overnight staff, you've got someone in a control center monitoring, 4 or 5 locations. It's not perfect because if somebody needs immediate help, it's going to take some time to get somebody there. But you've got all this other monitoring that's non-video, like the Simply Home stuff, like heat sensors on a stove, checking whether a door is locked or not, things like that. We're implementing those, but nothing from a video standpoint. Right. But the people that have implemented video say there are savings based on how it's set up and staffing.
I was just wondering if you would share with the guys, I think you had mentioned your son is a big gamer.
He is. So he was one of the original testers he's on the autism spectrum, and he struggles with social interactions, eye contact, meaningful conversations about more than gaming and anime at this point, and was one of the first folks that they had test some of these systems to see if practice makes perfect. That it's really hard to practice on real people, your social skills, especially if you're struggling with them. And it certainly won't replace human interaction, but it did benefit him in terms of recognizing a social situation maybe better than he did before. And the gaming aspect helps immensely.
Well, Chris, I want to thank you for being part of this. This was great, absolutely so helpful. We hope that you'll visit our technology page and learn more about what we're doing and what many other folks like Heritage are doing out there. There's a lot of development. We can learn from each other. It's a very exciting field. Chris, thanks again. You did a great job.
Thank you for having me.